Welcome, and thank you for joining us. My name is Sonya Grant, and I'm thrilled to be your moderator today for this very special presentation. Leading the conversation, insights from U of M-Dearborn alumni succeeding in the C-suites. Before I have the privilege of welcoming our amazing alumni panelists, I would first like to introduce myself, and I'd like to share a few housekeeping remarks. So again, thank you all for joining us today. I'm Sonya Grant, and I'm the president and CEO of Cobb Works, and we are a designated workforce development agency in the state of Georgia. I'm also a very proud alumni of U of M-Dearborn College of Arts and Sciences, where I received my BA in communications with a minor in political science. In addition to that, I'm very happy to say that I currently serve as the vice chair of the U of M-Dearborn Alumni Society Board. I'm completely delighted to be serving as your moderator tonight, so thank you for having me. Now let me share a few housekeeping remarks. Please note that this event is being recorded, and it will later be featured in the U of M-Dearborn Alumni Engagement Speaker Series. If you would like to check out this presentation or previous speakers, we encourage you to visit the uofmdearborn.edu/alumni. And also, please note that once we begin the program, I would ask that you please hold all your questions because there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions of our panelists a little bit later in the presentation. So now, without further ado, I am honored to welcome our expert panel of U of M-Dearborn alumni. For the sake of time, I'll be providing a shortened bio on each of the panelists. And once this recording is posted to the Alumni Engagement Speaker Series webpage, you can check out their full bios there. As I call your name, please turn on your camera. Lisa Bahash. Lisa is an experienced, successful C-suite executive and independent director. During her 30-year career in the automotive OEM and Tier 1 supplier sectors, she's accumulated an impressive set of technical, operational, and business leadership experiences. Lisa holds a master's degree in engineering management from Wayne State University and a Bachelor of Science degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Michigan-Dearborn. We also have Kim Dabbs. Kim is a change agent and an advocate who builds cultures of opportunity as the Global VP of Social Innovation and ESG Strategy at Steelcase. Kim is leading organizational change projects around the world and has given talks on social innovation, cultural transformation, and belonging at MIT, the Aspen Institute, the Drucker Forum, and even the Guggenheim. Kim holds a Master of Public Administration from U of M-Dearborn. We also have Trish Howell. Trish is the Chief Operating Officer at Element Science, where she's currently developing a wearable cardiac defibrillator for hospital use to home. Kim holds a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from the University of Michigan and an MBA in Finance from the University of Michigan-Dearborn. Last but certainly not least, we have Mary Naber. Mary is the CEO of PACE Southeast Michigan, which is a part of the National Program of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. Mary's 33 years in healthcare evolved to senior executive roles accountable for a wide scope of services. She's received her MBA from the University of Michigan-Dearborn and a BA from Oakland University. So please join me in welcoming Lisa, Kim, Trish, and Mary. Good evening, ladies. Thank you again for joining this important conversation. We certainly could not be more grateful for your willingness to share your knowledge, your experience, and your insight. I'd like to kick us off with the first question, if you don't mind. And we can go in any order, so feel free to jump right in after I ask the question, if you don't mind. Please share a little bit about your background and how you came to be where you are today.
I'd be happy to go first, I guess, since I
Thanks so much.
Since I graduated in '89 from U of M-Dearborn. It's been quite a while and quite a journey, one that I would have never planned this way for myself. I wouldn't have had that foresight. But I thought my whole career I would be a Ford Motor Company engineer. And that's where I started. While I was in school, I interned with both GM and Ford. And at the end, when I graduated, I joined Ford Motor Company right in Dearborn. And happy to do so, and spent the next 10 years with Ford proper. And then as Ford began to change its makeup and wanted to become a much flatter organization, I went to the Visteon side of the house, which was the manufacturing groups within Ford Motor Company. And once I left Ford, it was quite easy and convenient to move from supply-based role to supply-based role. And that's what I did. I just started learning more and more and wanting to achieve more and more. And I worked my way up and through being a CEO at Gabriel Ride Control, being a group vice president and general manager with Johnson Controls Battery Division, and a executive vice president at Jabil Electronics Manufacturer. And from there, I went into private equity, and I left private equity in October of last year to concentrate on board positions. So today I sit as a non-executive director on an Australian traded company named Cyber Resources. We mine and process graphite for lithium ion batteries. And I was also prior on a Canadian company as well named Shawcor in the oil and gas space. And I can't wait for the questions. I have a lot of thoughts to share as people begin to go forward on their careers. And I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. We are certainly excited to hear from you. What an impressive background. Trish, did you want to share?
I would love to go next because Lisa just did like my first 15 years. So yes, mechanical engineer, MBA by education, started in, at Ford, right? And similarly moved over to Visteon. Mechanical engineer from Michigan-Ann Arbor, but big company, also robust training development. But decided to get my MBA at night school, where that's where UM-Dearborn comes in. And then moved into some business roles and was recruited out to San Francisco by an automotive startup, which was not Tesla, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. And though, the company didn't progress while I was there, I worked with some great people who brought me into medical devices. So that was in 2003. And at this point, I've now been doing medical devices longer than automotive, which is really hard to believe for me. So I've held a variety of roles. Always leveraging my technical and business backgrounds and moved up through operations. So, product development, supply chain, manufacturing, logistics, quality, regulatory, and even facilities or real estate kind of stuff. So I've been with very large companies as well as very small companies and everything in between. What I do, I build and scale infrastructure, and I've been at companies that have been acquired or also been doing the acquiring. And similarly, I am on 2 public boards. So, that gives me a perspective from both the management teams and the board's view of a business. And I think at this point, I'm known for my versatility, and I'll say I'm a jack of all trades and a master of many, or maybe I should have said Jill. But it's a fun ride. I love what I'm doing, and I look forward to sharing some of my experiences with the folks today. So,
thank you so much, Trish. We certainly appreciate that. Mary or Kim?
I'm happy to go next.
Thank you.
So I'm Mary Naber, and I have spent my entire career, which is well over 43 years, in healthcare. And that's because I love the business of healthcare and the people that we care for. And I would say that I did not have a deliberate path. It was one of those things that I just kind of stumbled into. I'm from a very large family. My parents could not afford college, but I wanted to go. So I was the first to go to college, and I started with a scholarship from my high school, ran out of money after my first year at Oakland University, and figured out how to do work and then go to school at night. So by the time I finished my undergrad, I was 27 years old. And then I went on to UM-Dearborn. I wanted to get an MBA, and I had married at the time. And in that process had 4 kids. So I was working on an MBA at night. And in those days, we didn't have all this wonderful technology. We had to go in classroom and sit there for 3 hours or whatever. And that's what I did. And luckily, my husband was a great partner and watched 4 kids. And so I'm happy to report that by the time I was 40, I had finished my MBA at UM-Dearborn. Then they offered me a job to teach organizational behavior. So I did that for a year, and I consulted. I had left healthcare for actually 2 years and doing those things. And I consulted for a couple of years, and then I was recruited back into healthcare. I worked for a large health system called Ascension. It's a national health system for many, many years, doing lots of wonderful change projects and initiatives and overseeing multiple functions, actually, as a senior executive. And then 10 years ago, I left that health system world and consulted again for a little while. Then I stumbled into this business called PACE. And what we do is we care for chronically ill older adults who are low income and keep them out of nursing homes. And we do that by wrapping our arms around them. And it's a complex model. It's across the country. And we serve all of Southeast Michigan, well over 1,600 people that we're caring for today. So I thought I'd do it for a couple of years, and I fell in love with it. It's become a mission and a way of life for me. So that's kind of me. My 4 children are grown now and having their own families, and that's a very exciting part of life for me as well.
I can imagine. Thank you so much for sharing, Mary. I love your non-traditional journey. There's so many of us out there that take that path, and having those kinds of stories to share is really critical in allowing people to understand that anything is possible if you persevere. So thank you for sharing that. Kim.
Thanks so much, Sonya. Yeah, my name is Kim Dabbs. I lead ESG, environment, social governance topics, and social impact for a company called Steelcase, which is headquartered in West Michigan. And we're one of the global leaders in creating work experiences and work environments, both where people work, learn, and can thrive. But when I think about my journey here, that's such a long journey. It feels like, but as a Korean-born American adoptee that's currently living in Munich, Germany, I always felt the world was made up of places I didn't belong. So when we think about how school happens, how the world happens, it's been a long path, and I always knew that I wanted to make a difference in the world, in the lives of others. And that's been kind of a common theme of the jobs that I've taken over the years. I started actually in the nonprofit sector, working in equity and education around just the most brilliant students that were facing some really challenging systems that were getting in the way of opportunity. So our organization really looked at holistic systems and how we could remove barriers to opportunity for them. Over the years, I realized that it needed holistic solutions in order for all of us to come together and all of us to start making change together. So I started taking multi-stakeholder approaches to what that looked like, both on the public policy side, as well as on the nonprofit side. And finally coming over to the corporate sector, understanding that so much of these systems are interconnected to where opportunity can thrive or where opportunity actually stalls out. I joined this company that I'm working in now, Steelcase, because I saw firsthand the power of environments and the power of spaces to actually provide equitable outcomes for students. And I wanted to be a part of that, whether that happened in the classroom, in the boardroom, or in the communities in which we lived and worked. So I started over here in Germany when I launched our Learning and Innovation Center, which was a regional hub. Regional over here means Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So we worked throughout that region to really decide what a learning organization could do. Over time, once I learned what we could do as a company internally for our own internal culture, I started leading our consulting business in EMEA to help other companies decide and define what that work experience is. I had the great fortune of moving into a position where I took on social innovation, so rethought how companies and communities actually interacted together. So instead of designing for community, how can we start designing with community? And these are the programs and initiatives that we started building and designing. And now leading ESG, all of our impact that we have in the world as a global company with over 11,000 employees in 60 different locations It's how do we actually bring what we're learning back into our own systems, making sure that our policies and our practices create the conditions for everyone to thrive. And that brought me here today. So thank you.
Well, thank you too, Kim. This was just really an impressive group of women that we have here today. I love the diverse perspectives that we're going to get. And I'm going to just jump right in and start with another question, if you guys don't mind. As previous students of many different colleges, you know, it's often said that hindsight is 20/20. What is one thing you did as a student in college that you would have done differently today if you had the same wisdom and knowledge that you have today?
I can go first. I would have paid more attention. Yeah. No, it was a great school. I didn't go away to school, obviously, at UM-Dearborn. I lived close, and that was convenient. And I think it allowed for a deeper learning experience, maybe not so much fun to be had elsewhere. But as always, you always wish that you had paid a little more attention to certain things, and it might have made a little bit of a difference.
Mary.
I can complement that same thought. I always wanted to go away to school, couldn't afford it. That's my one regret, is that I wish I had, because I think I would have learned different things, right? But it also, it's balanced by all the things you learn when you're working during the day and you go to school at night, and how you're focused on that. Because for me, I was paying my own way, so there wasn't any time to fool around or to have some fun. And I think that that's a little bit of what I missed. At least for my kids who did go away to college, that's what it looked like. A lot more fun.
I bet, right?
Yes.
Trish or Kim?
Okay. So I had the luxury of both. My undergrad, my parents paid for, and my MBA, I had to, do myself. But really, you weren't missing out. I would tell my younger self to stop and smell the roses, appreciate the journey. I was so goal oriented, both in undergrad in Ann Arbor and then at Dearborn with my MBA, just focused on getting the degree and moving on to the next thing. And there were probably, I know there were, not probably, really great things that I sacrificed to do that, to just get done as soon as I can in both scenarios. So I am proud. I'm so proud of both degrees, and I love the University of Michigan as a system, and Dearborn was very important to me. But I think I could have, absorbed more or been more involved in things. So that would be my message. So take time.
I love it. I love it. Kim?
Yeah, I think as a student, traditional, non-traditional, whatever you are, as a student coming into the system, I think you forget how much power and privilege you have by having the title of student. The vast amount of doors that can open, the conversations that can happen. And I think I wish I would have taken more advantage of that. I hope students take more advantage of that. The opportunity to call up any one of us on this panel today, the opportunity to network into different places, to reach out to people on LinkedIn to say, hey, I'm interested in this and I'm a student. And that student title you have for such a short period of time to really leverage that as an opportunity to open doors and to learn about different people and different things. I can't tell you how many times I'll always make time for coffee with someone that's reaching out that's a student, because so many different choices and options and opportunities are afforded to them during that short period of time. So I think it's a great opportunity to take advantage of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I just heard you mention networking, and I will tell you that I am the worst networker in the history of man. Okay. Can you share some insight into networking and the importance and the value that it brings to your career?
Yeah,
I would love to go
to
first.
build on,
If you were asking Kim, go ahead, but I would love to go
I'm
first.
asking all the ladies. How's
Okay,
that?
go ahead, Kim. Go ahead. So
just to build on what I was saying, I think and networking is just like anything else, whether you're learning economics or whether you're learning statistics. Learning networking is such a critical skill. I think the advice that I would give people along those lines is anything you do has to be done with authenticity and intention. That if you're going to spend the time trying to build your network, make sure that you're building resilient networks that are rooted in human connection, not just as a transaction, but really as a lifelong opportunity to learn and get to know people. Those are the people that you're really going to forge relationships with. So it's not about more, it's about the quality of the relationship.
Absolutely. Trish, you want to jump in on that?
no, I do, because I think for me, like there was what's the one gem or something you would tell people. For me, it's network. I did not get where I am by myself. I worked very hard. I busted my butt. But to me, it's also always, be building and maintaining relationships. So many roles I've had have been through my network, advisory boards or public boards or all these things. It's just built upon itself, and you work hard, you do the right thing, you deliver results, and then people remember that, and you have to you can't just connect with someone and then come back 20 years later. You need to, the maintaining part is the important part, I guess. So you build it and then maintain it. So
Absolutely. Mary?
Yeah, I agree with Kim. I think it's a lot about the making a connection, a meaningful connection with different individuals, and doing it in an authentic way. Those are the lasting kinds of relationships that you want, and they come back to you in different ways that you don't expect when you're young. When you're young,
Yes.
people want to help you. They want, I want to help young people maybe learn about different avenues and paths that they can take and give them more to think about. And I had people in my life who did that for me. And so I would just say, remain open to that. You'd be amazed at who you can learn from when you least expect it, and how that may lead you to something else. And I just think it's a wonderful way to kind of open up your world, is through meeting different people and making a meaningful connection with them. And they will remain part of your life for, you'll be amazed at for how long.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing that I've heard in this part of the conversation is that authenticity and those meaningful relationships, you have to ensure that they're not transactional kinds of relationship. It has to be meaningful, because those authentic relationships will be more resilient.
Yes.
Transactional relationships will only last a moment, but those meaningful relationships will last a lifetime. So thank you, ladies, for sharing that. And Lisa, unless you want to jump in on this, I'll jump to the next question.
Yeah, if I could just
Yes,
quickly,
please.
I would
Yes, ma'am.
say I'm not a big networker, but once I was connected with somebody, I stayed connected. And mostly now in my career, it's because I mentor a lot of people. And I would just say, don't assume you know where the best advice or help will come from.
Yes.
Because you don't. And my mentors tend to be non-automotive related, non-executive related. And sometimes it's the simple common sense stuff that can prove to be more helpful than not.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Lisa,
Mary,
can I
go ahead.
add one more thing?
Yes.
We both learn in those kind of network situations, right? Because talking to somebody also opens up my mind to new opportunity. And even when, as long as you've lived, you still remain open to how others can help you see a new perspective, and for you to learn a new way to think about something. So I see it as a two-way thing.
Absolutely. Mentorship is certainly a two-way thing. Absolutely. I certainly appreciate that. In my first leadership position, I was a direct report to the president of the company, and she later became my mentor. One of the things that she told me when I first got this opportunity with her, she said, Sonya, 50% of your job is the work. The other 50% is relationship building. And to this very day, I feel like this was some of the best advice I've ever received. Can you guys talk a little bit about the best advice you've ever received in your lifetime?
I'll go.
Well, I was
ahead,
gonna say
Lisa.
mine is network, so
I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna just it is. So
Yeah.
I will just say network.
I actually have a mentor who's a horse whisperer and a family counselor and a minister in his own church.
Mhm.
And I've used him now in 3 companies. He has a leadership program that he uses horses with. His name is Dr. Lou Sterrett. And the best advice or the best piece of information I've ever received is that people they all want the same thing.
Mm.
And it's the first and most important thing. It's that they want to be valued. And if you can understand what that means, it's not necessarily money or, compensation or recognition. It's about being valued.
Yeah.
Valued and knowing that your life and your participation has true meaning.
Mm.
If you can work on that and understand it, you can make a big impact to everybody that you touch on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Kim?
Yeah, I think I've received so many great things that I've taken forward in my life. I think one of them that really stays with me day in and day out, and this is more tactical, just on a daily basis.
Mhm.
Our lives are so busy, and everyone talks about busy, 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 and not enough time, and all of this. And one of my mentors had told me one time, manage your energy, not your time.
Mm.
And I thought that was such an interesting reframe, that when we think about what we do and how we spend our days and how we spend our hours and minutes and moments, when we think about aligning the work that we need to get done to the energy that we have, watching, in the morning, I'm writing a book about belonging, and my writing time actually is in the morning, that first hour, because I know that's where my creative energy is. And then I try to manage different spots of matching work with the types of energy that I have, knowing how my days go. And when we think about that, a lot of times we try to force different types of work into different modes that we're feeling or experiencing on a daily basis. And by doing that reshift, has really changed kind of the quality of thinking, the quality of creativity, the quality of output that I've had throughout my career.
Excellent. Mary or Trish?
I thought I already did that one.
Oh,
Okay,
there's that one word. One word. Networking.
Yep, network. I mean, I could expand more, but I'm happy to. But yeah.
Oh no, that's fine. If that's it, that's fine. Absolutely.
I don't mean it's that, but I did not get where I am by myself. And I said, I'm always building, and maintaining is more probably important. You're building new networks or relationships, but also maintaining them from 25, 30 years ago. So people will call me up and say, can you help me with this? Or you need to advise me on this. So, but that would be my thing. For sure.
I often tell my daughter that, relationships are reciprocal, that whatever you put into a relationship, you get back. So you have to consistently be putting things into a relationship. And even those relationships that you may have had a long time ago, once in a while, send that person an email, or maybe even pick up the phone and say hello, or call for coffee. Even if it's someone
them,
yes.
It's not just like a LinkedIn contact that you have from 25 years ago. I'm dating myself, but so I mean, cultivate that. So
absolutely, those have to be cultivated. I appreciate that. So let's talk a little bit about climbing the corporate ladder, ladies. Climbing the corporate ladder is a challenge for everyone, but specifically for women, it can be even more difficult. And that's due to a number of different factors that we don't necessarily have to talk about today. But can you just talk a little bit about what would be the best way to go about climbing the corporate ladder? What kind of advice can you give? I'll start with Lisa.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sonya. Well, it's a difficult one. As I said in my introduction, right? I didn't plan my career. I worked hard and I felt like I did the right things, gave the right information for decision making and so forth. My advice would be this: find out who you are as a person, be genuine, be authentic, and be that person. Too many times I see people, I call them shapeshifters, right? You don't really know what they stand for, who they are, what they're going to stand behind, if they're going to have your back when they say you have it, when they say they have your back. Be who you are, and then work that. And for me, that's very open, high integrity, high ethic, and work hard and do the right things. And then hopefully right time, the right place comes along, and you'll start to see opportunities come your way. Sometimes
Absolutely.
you have to make them. Sometimes they won't come your way. Sometimes you have to make them. But I would not compromise who I am or my beliefs to get there.
Thank you for saying that. I mean, that's so important, integrity and authenticity, and not compromising, your morality and your character to fit into a box that people hope to see you in. Mary.
Boy, it's hard to follow what Lisa just said, because I concur completely. I think as women in particular, and I'm going to say this and I'm going to age myself. I'm 66. I'm going to be 67 this year. And so I remember, and I'm sure many of you do, and probably still do, where the top leadership is male dominated. And I watched many women try to climb the ladder and be like men.
Yeah.
And it goes right back to being your true, authentic self. And what is how your values guide you. And if you can lead according to that, I believe you'll be successful, because you'll find the right places. You'll find the right places where you learn. And when you stop learning, you find another place and you learn again. And even if you fail, you're going to learn from that. Right. And so I'm a big believer that you've got to be true to yourself, just as Lisa said. And the other thing I would add is that the only person you can control and change is you. So as a leader, it's so important for us to remember that all the time. And then how did I contribute to whatever that situation was? And what could I have done different that might have produced a different outcome? So it's kind of always looking in the mirror.
Yes.
What else could I do?
Absolutely.
And what am I not willing to do? Right. Those are all decisions and choices that we all make as we move into our different roles. And I would say sometimes getting at the top is not necessarily for everybody, even if it might be what they think they want.
Absolutely. Having an ability to be introspective and see your culpability in a situation is critical. I mean, you may find that there's always something that you could have done better.
Yes.
So thank you for saying that. Trish. You're on mute. I'm sorry.
I'm back. No, I said thank you for that, but I would echo the former responses and prior responses. And to me, it's all about like how you achieve results is as important as the results themselves. So for me, I always say, meet or exceed expectations, but do it with like a smile or in a positive way, or, there's the cultural aspect and, kind of doing it happily. So for me, that's my 2 cents.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. And Kim, did you want to comment, or would you like me to move on to the next question?
Well, I think, especially through the perspective of talking to students, climbing the corporate ladder, it's not the goal. And I think to be really clear about that, if you can root yourself, like everyone has said, in authenticity, but the only reason to grow influence is to change the world, right? So it's like, what is that change that you want to see in the world? And then how is a growing capacity, growing platforms, growing whatever it is, actually contribute to that? When we think about sitting in a boardroom, and you reminded me of this time I had to go in and present to our board of directors, and I walked into the room and it was me, our head of legal, our head of HR, our CEO, as well as our researcher and chief legal officer. And I walked in and I like sat down and I looked around, and everyone in the room was female. And it was this moment where I was like, this is a moment where representation matters. Is this how people have felt when you walk into a room and all of a sudden you realize everyone that was sitting there, everyone that had the decision-making power to change the lives of others or to improve the lives of others, all were female, just like me. It was an amazing experience. Representation matters. So when you think about climbing corporate ladders, to what end, for what reason, what change? Because the only reason to hold power, is to share that power with others. So how are you taking that opportunity to get in that position to change the world or share that with others? And I think it's really important to keep that in view, not getting power for power's sake, but getting power to remove barriers for others.
Thank you so much for that enlightening perspective. I certainly appreciate it. I want to move on to talk a little bit about women in the workplace and equal pay for women. We all know that women are often paid less than men for doing the very same job. And this is known as being equal pay for equal work. And I think that all of us understand that there's a gender pay gap, and it's well known and well documented. And for 2023, it's documented that men will earn more than $10,000 than women across the nation. What's the one piece of advice that you could give a woman hoping to move into leadership and navigating fair pay and a competitive salary? I'll ask for a volunteer to start. How's that? Kim or Trish?
I can start.
Thank you.
Yeah, so when I started at Ford Motor Company, right out of school from UM-Dearborn, I started at less pay than my male counterparts that came from the exact same school with the exact same degree. And at that time, this is really dating myself, but it was like 32,400 versus 34,200, something like that. So you're talking hundreds of dollars difference, right? This was back in the 80s. And I went to my father and I said, Dad, I know this for a fact because I know what my friend is getting paid. And he said, honey, don't worry about that right now. Do the best work you can possibly do. Make sure that you and your skill sets are always in demand, and then demand fair pay or more because your skill sets and what you bring to the table is real value. And that's what I've done. And then just a side comment on what Kim's intention was. As I moved into leadership, I also took an active role in ensuring equal pay for people, within the organization that I was in, and asking the questions when leaders are sitting around the table of why somebody X should get more than Y when they do the same role, have the same level of experience, and so on and so on. So I took advantage of being able to challenge it as well later in my career.
Well, we certainly thank you for having those difficult conversations, because they can be challenging conversations, but they're really critical. Kim.
Yeah, I think it's still mind-boggling to me that we're struggling with some of these basic human rights issues in this time when information is so readily apparent. When some of the policies and practices we put in, it's not just, in that pay moment, it's how people get hired, how job descriptions are written, how we mitigate bias from our hiring practices and systems. All of those matter. I think demanding pay equity analysis in your organization, that's key and critical. It's something that we do as a regular practice in our organization to ensure that there is gender parity in pay. Equal pay for equal work. All of these things matter, but as you're navigating some of those early things, this happens over time, but as you're navigating or negotiating for that first position, I think it's really important to do your homework These are
Mm.
things that you can't just go in and expect all of the systems to be calibrated towards equity. And if they're not, like, you need to band together with others to build a movement to say, you know, oh, what is this job? What is the pay scale? What are those markers that I can look at before I go in and start negotiating? Because what you negotiate for that first job is so critical, especially coming out of school, because that that job, that salary that you negotiate becomes the foundation for every other increase that you have for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And that first job negotiation and that salary negotiation is critical. So I think women supporting other women, being transparent, having transparent conversations about how much you make, how to negotiate that salary. And then once you have positions within organizations, when talking to your HR partners, asking about pay equity analyses, talk about different policies that are in place to ensure that there is a legacy of equity for others coming behind you.
Excellent. Mary or Trish?
I don't even have anything to add, really. In California in January, we would have to now put pay scales and stuff on job descriptions when we're recruiting. So it's very more transparent. So I would.
No, that's certainly progress. Absolutely. So that's an important progress as well, an important precedent to set across the nation. Mary?
I had a chief HR role for a while. And so it became very important that we were transparent and I do today as the CEO of a company.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure that we're transparent and equitable in what we pay and the approach that we use. And I can tell you that for many years, I probably let the money ride. I would say, oh, it's not that important to me.
Mm-hmm.
But as I've aged and learned and recognized the value of what I bring, I'm less willing, right, to just settle for less. And I've worked in nonprofit healthcare forever. And there's always this thing that you're doing it just because you love it. And that is part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But there is also an equitable conversation to have. And and as a leader now, I can make sure that we're having them, at least in the company that I'm in, which is a really good thing.
Well, go ahead, Lisa. Thank you.
Can I just add one more thing?
No, please do.
And I tell this to a lot of people. If you give it, they'll take it. So if you're willing to give up on equal pay or give more effort than others give or whatever, nobody is going to stop you from doing that.
Absolutely.
Right. So you have to be willing to stand for what's appropriate for yourself and others.
Well, I certainly appreciate all of you guys being on the forefront, fighting for equal pay for women. We're definitely not where we should be. But we're certainly not where we used to be, and we're consistently moving the needle. And I hope that you guys will remain diligent and ensuring that that access and that fight is on the forefront for your organizations. So thank you for that. Okay, let's jump right to the next question, if you don't mind. Oh, yeah. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about, well, let me say this. As you guys know right now, talent recruitment and retention are critical issues for employers today, right? All you hear, I'm in workforce development, and you hear every day, talent, talent, talent. Where's the talent? Employers are definitely struggling to find the right people, and they're also struggling to keep their existing talent. We often hear from employers, and we hear that they say that individuals are lacking the soft skills that they need, how to communicate effectively in the workplace, teamwork, time management, critical thinking, decision-making. What do you think are some of the most important soft skills for young people to learn, and why? I'll start with Trish.
I'm very passionate about this, so I'll go first.
Thank you.
Listening, really listening intently, and then I don't know if it's being a female, which we all are here amongst ourselves, but being able to intuit what someone means and not just what they say. So I've been told by a couple different CEOs and other folks in my career that like I'm kind of like an interpreter in meetings. It could be a board meeting, it could be a company meeting where someone asks a question and someone else starts answering a different question. I'm like, I don't think that's what they meant. So it's like reading body language. I don't want to get into all that stuff, but just knowing, and I think we have an innate ability to do that. So I would say listening for sure for me, and not just jumping in or wanting to act. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Trish. Mary.
Yeah, this one I'm also very passionate about, because in healthcare, we're in a business that cares for people. So the ability to relate to all different kinds of people and their unique experiences in life. So knowing the questions to ask in respectful, appropriate ways, and staying curious versus judgmental, remaining aware of how we all have separate realities. And again, that listening is all part of it, really being true to that person in the moment. And it's the reason I'm so passionate about it in particular now is because of texting and social media and all the different vehicles that people are communicating with one another. And yet, are we really developing what I'm going to call coping skills, communication skills, where we're resolving conflict with one another in a way other than text?
Absolutely.
And to me, that gets to the human spirit and how we really connect with one another in the work that we do. If we're able to connect with one another, it's going to be a lot easier to do teamwork, right? It's going to be a lot easier to accomplish things than if we don't work at that part. So I think the ability to do that and to have those skills, and it's not one, it's probably many, but they're all related to the soft skills in my world. And I don't even know why they call them soft skills, because they're not easy. They're difficult to practice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it can take a lifetime to perfect them. It really
Exactly.
can.
Yes.
Yes. Lisa.
Sure, I'd love to talk about this. I'm going to talk about it in two ways, if that's okay. The first one is kind of along the lines of what Mary was just saying. I spent a lot of my career time telling people to get on the phone or go see somebody face to face, right? Email was bad enough. Now you throw in texting and social media and all these other things. In the workplace, you have to be face to face. You have to know the person you're dealing with, because then you're less likely to screw them over. Let's just say what it is, right? You're going
Absolutely.
to work harder to do the right things when you know somebody. And so I've spent a lot of my time asking people, did you go talk to them? Go talk to them. That's a pretty basic one. From a leadership perspective, so I want to talk to those that think they want to be in leadership. People are very different from each other. So your leadership toolbox has to be wide and deep, because you have to learn how to be a leader to many different people. And you can't use the same tactics and skills with everybody. They come from different backgrounds, different experiences, different sensitivities, different cultures, what have you. And everybody needs to feel valued, but it might be in a little different way. And so I can't say that I've studied, but along my career, I've run through things like the push style, the pull style.
Sure.
How do you provoke somebody to excellence? How do you learn to motivate somebody?
Yeah.
So think about your leadership toolbox and try to fill it with as many things as you can.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that. I think situational leadership is really, really critical, because everyone needs something a little bit different. And you can't have one approach to every person in your organization. You have to really learn how to understand what people need and be able to respond effectively. So thank you so much for saying that. Kim.
Yeah, I think right now in the world that we live in, kind of the two things that I always look for in people are, one, equity, just like, oh, everything has an equity lens. Make sure that equity is at the heart. Like you've been trained to understand and see what equitable systems are, what they aren't, and where you can change them. It also allows you to act with bravery, to speak truth to power, all of those things that you need to do as a leader, especially in these days. The other piece is empathy. So when we think about empathy, it's not always just, understanding where people are coming from. It's also having the skill to be able to understand other people's lived and learned experiences, but then also facilitate civil discourse around them. And we live in such a divided world right now where there's so much us versus them. Civil discourse is going to be a key and critical competency to anyone working together in order to make anything happen, because people are so different, because people have different backgrounds, different lived experiences. We need to learn how to have a conversation, how to start with understanding, how to lead with empathy. And radical candor is a part of that. So one, having that equity lens of candor, but two, being able to have civil discourse around those topics that are going to impact people in the workplace.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you guys for this part of the conversation. This was really a great portion of the conversation that I've enjoyed. Let's talk a little bit about discrimination. I heard Kim talk a little bit about equity. Has anyone on the panel ever dealt with discrimination in the workplace because of being a woman, or discriminatory because of your hair or your religion or whatever that might be? And if so, how did you deal with it? I'll call on Trish.
I will say, I'm not naive to that it exists. Unfortunately, I have not been explicitly. Maybe there has been, or it took me longer to get where I am or something, but I really don't feel that is the case. But I know there's a struggle out there, so I don't want to be naive to it. But that's a personal thing. But also, I'm seen as naturally relatable to by others, and I will default to men first. But I'm really into sports. I golf. I'm a fantasy football champion. Whatever, all that kind of stuff. But so yay. But I can relate to women as well, because it could be, that kind of discrimination. But I see it and I know it exists, but I haven't had to deal with it. So that was your direct question. So
no, that was helpful. Thank you very much. Mary.
Yes, I would say that we all have our own biases. And sometimes we're aware of them and sometimes we're not. And I would just say, from a female perspective and being a mother in the workplace, people would often comment about, how come you're working full time? And my husband's a physician, so they would add that part. And, and it becomes more about those traits than it is about who I am, what I would like for my own life. And so they make assumptions, right? People make assumptions. I don't fall to it very easily. So I too kind of push through it. And sometimes I use it as an opportunity to educate another perspective.
Absolutely.
So, so I'm not shy about that. I do it very pleasantly and respectfully, but my goal is to help people think about it from a different perspective. And I have an oldest son that's gay, and I'm very sensitive to the bias that relates to that perspective. So, and I have a very diverse company. And so those are, it's in front of us all the time. We just have to remain aware of our own bias, right? Because of where we come from and the lives that we've lived, and how that might influence someone else in their life. So probably less about me and more about what I experience as a leader for others and the kind of culture we're trying to create that makes, kind of back to Kim's word, people feel like they belong and can do their best work, right? When you feel like you belong, you can do your best work. And so that to me is the importance awareness for the people in leadership.
Thank you, Mary. That's very helpful. What about you, Lisa?
Yeah, unfortunately, I've experienced it personally. I've experienced it as a leader with other people in the company, and I've experienced it in the boardroom, not related to myself, but within the company. And from a how do you deal with it? There's formal processes, there's legal processes, arbitration, there's informal approaches to the offending parties, but I'd rather answer the question around what I believe the actual cause is. And that's when people talk about diversity and inclusion. I was on a panel for the Society of Automotive Engineers a number of years back. And we were talking about diversity and including at that time millennials. And unfortunately, I believe diversity has become more of a numbers game, and we're not farther along in reality. And I think the foundation problem is inclusivity. If you're not inclusive in thought, how are you ever going to be inclusive in male, female, black, white, etc.? You're just not going to. If you can't accept that there's more reasonable ideas and thoughts around how to attack a problem or go about something other than your own in a boardroom or in a leadership meeting or whatever, we're never going to get there. So that's how I tend to talk about it when I'm in meetings or in a boardroom, is an exclusivity. And let's talk about the ideas, take the person out of it and get right down to the root cause of the ideas and thoughts.
Absolutely. And as leaders, it's our responsibility to develop a culture of inclusiveness, ensuring that.
And I gotta jump in. I'm sorry, but
Yes,
Lisa,
that's okay.
I am with you 100%. And I will say one thing that's worked for me is to start out with, we want to get here, we're here. Say the other person, you got to acknowledge they've got to be at least 10% right. You can't be 100% right and you've got everything and you know it all. Assume like 10% of what they're saying, acknowledge that, and then build off that. And that has really helped me. I don't know, but we've got to get to more of a common ground, to your point. So.
No, perfect. Thank you so much for adding that, Trish. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were just talking about gender pay equity, like that in and of itself is discrimination. We all experience it in so many different ways. For me, like growing up in a traditionally or a predominantly white community, it was always things. You're not white, you're in Asia, you're not Korean enough, you're not American enough, you're not male, you're not this, you're not that. Like each of these things that society tells us we are, we aren't, starts to shape kind of what we accept as truth. And I think, discrimination in and of itself, yes, everyone's experiencing it. And this is forever work. So we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. This work, this research that I'm doing around belonging, it's, even if we have inclusion, which is, to some organizations, like such an important and critical part of that journey. But if people don't feel like they belong, if they don't feel like they can be seen, heard, and valued on their own terms, the inclusion doesn't matter. Like nothing along that spectrum can be achieved. And I think, each of us has experienced discrimination. I've experienced discrimination on multiple different fronts, both in the workplace as well as in the world. From, people on the street telling me to go back to my own country, to more microaggressions, to, oh, why don't you smile more? Why don't you do this? Like all of these things are forms of discrimination that end up hurting you like a paper cut. And over time, those words, that sense of belonging, actually, they had done research, It shares the same neural pathways as physical pain. So when you think about a workplace and how toxic that can be when people accept these microaggressions, when they don't attack bias head on, people are physically living in pain from that exclusion, living in pain, feeling like they don't belong. And these are the things that are going to be the challenges of our generation. If we can start to address this at the organizational level, at the workplace level, at the team level, you're going to start to see radical shifts. But in order for that to happen, representation matters. And I'm going to keep coming back to this, but representation matters because who's sitting in the boardroom, who's making those decisions, it matters. Lived experiences, like you can have civil discourse, but unless you have that diversity of lived experiences, the policies aren't going to shift at the pace we need them to.
Well, thank you, Kim. I'm so glad to be having a conversation with women as progressive in thinking as you are as a Black woman. It warms my heart to hear that you all, each of you, are working towards an inclusive workplace and ensuring that people have a seat at the table and a voice and feel valued. As Kim said a moment ago, if people don't feel as if they have a voice or that they matter, it makes a major difference in how the organization will achieve their outcomes, makes a major difference in how the organization will retain employees and new innovative strategies, because diversity matters. So again, thank you for this part of the conversation. It was really important. So let's talk about your technical skills, lady. I know you're all talented. That's very, very obvious. I've seen your resumes and your bios. Can you talk a little bit about what you think the most important technical skill is for an individual to learn? I've lightened the conversation, as you can see.
I'm gonna go, okay, squirrel. You know what, for me, so I'm an engineer by education with an MBA, but for me, it's how to think logically, really. Take a problem, break it down, come up with solutions. And this is applicable to both technical challenges as well as commercial ones. So for me, that's one of the most valuable things I gained through my education as opposed to life experience, but just, that thinking process. And, you can start out and something looks insurmountable, but you break it down into chunks, deal with them. So to me, it's thinking logically.
Excellent. Thank you, Trish. What about you, Mary?
I think logical thinking is also being able to critically think and evaluate situations is, I don't know if you call that a technical skill, but I do in my work.
I do.
Yeah, I really do. And the other one is the financial acumen. You don't need to be a CFO, but you do need to understand the finances of your business and understand what data is telling you. And ensuring that the data is feeding the logic, right? And not the other way around. So that's what I would say, is understanding what data you need and how that applies to whatever problem you're trying to solve.
Absolutely. Excellent.
Yeah.
Anyone else like to contribute to that one? Yes, ma'am. Lisa.
Yeah, I would just say, and I totally agree, financial acumen, critical thinking, decision making are sure. I think for me, if we're talking about women that want to move up in leadership or into the C-suite, it's to recognize that your skill set changes, right? The balance of what you use in your skill set changes. If you start out as an engineer, yes, your engineering skill sets are going to be quite heavy. And then as you move up, you'll see them shift. And by the time I was a CEO, I would say it was 90% leadership and 10% technical. And in that leadership, I put financial acumen, business acumen, legal acumen, because I'm a very common sense kind of leader. And for example, lawyers tend to be very risk adverse. So you need to know how to challenge all of the different functions in order to get you the best solution or answer to a problem or opportunity or what have you. So for me, it's understanding that your skill set is going to change over time and embracing that and start shifting appropriately.
Excellent. Kim, did you want to contribute? Or should I jump into the Q&A?
Just quickly, I think
Yes, ma'am.
the technical skill is designing with people and not for people. And I think that shift and design acumen is one of these technical areas of expertise around co-creation that's going to be critical for the future.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kim. At this point in time, we'll pause for a moment and allow our audience to jump in and ask questions of their own. Okay. Here's our first student question. Currently, what is one of the biggest challenges that you're facing within your industry? And I'll just let anyone jump in for this because it may not be applicable to you.
I can start.
Go ahead, Mary. Thank you.
We're in a people business, as I said before. Healthcare is struggling with staffing. And luckily at PACE, because we offer a different kind of care model, we're able to attract more than others. But you know, the numbers are telling us that people are leaving healthcare, they're leaving health systems, and it's in my view of the world, it's because of these things we've been talking about that healthcare needs a redesign in the way the cultures occur for the people.
Sure.
And so that's one of the greatest challenges. How do you change an environment in healthcare that's going to be attractive to young people coming forward, so that as people like me continue to age, they're going to be caregivers that are going to want to do this work.
Yeah, absolutely.
The work life is more attractive than what it is and what it has been for them.
Anyone else want to comment on that? A challenge facing your industry?
I'll comment.
Okay, thanks, Lisa.
I think it's just to follow on what Mary was saying, because I think it's a challenge facing the world, is the prior generations were hardworking generations. And we're seeing a new generation that there's a little bit more of a mix of hardworking versus maybe sense of entitlement, or maybe they don't want to pursue the gratification of buying things and having things, right? The material side. So whatever their reason is, we're seeing the work ethic declining. And that's a problem. Even from the point of, you actually do need to go into work for most jobs. You need to be on site. You need to be with your team members.
Yeah.
Everything can be done remotely. And it's not always all going to be about you and what you get out of it. So there has to be a balance. And I just see that things swung from here way over to here, and we've got to get it back to something practical in the middle.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to ask Kim to ask this question, or maybe Trish. Can you share a little bit about your time at U of M-Dearborn and how you feel it prepared you for your existing work?
Kim, I'll let you go first. I've spoken a lot, but okay, I'll chime in.
No, go ahead, Trish.
Okay, sure. Well, for me, there were two things that stand out. I did Dearborn at night school while I was working at Ford, but to expand kind of my breadth as opposed to depth, and getting more technical with an engineering master's or something. But really for me, two classes that stood out were accounting, and I had a great professor for that. And being an ops person now this late in my career, metrics are everything. So that was very helpful. And then the other one really that for me was organizational behavior. So, you know, I came from Ann Arbor, doing a very theoretical approach to engineering, very technical. And when I got out into the work world, let's call it, you know, finding what was applicable from what I learned was an experience, let's call it. And when I took OB, you know, I would go and either go to a class or go home and do homework or learn something. And I'd go to work the next day and go, oh, that's why so-and-so is doing that or whatever. And I just found it really eye-opening and kind of fun for me. And it was very engaging. So, so for me, you know, part of my UMD experience was really being, you know, really hands-on. And although it was in a business role, not the technical role, but I thought it was great and was directly applicable the next day to something I was doing at work. Let's put it that way.
I love it. Thank you so much. I have another question, unless Kim wants to comment on that one. I do have another question from a student. Okay, I'll jump to the next question then. Any experience and opportunities that you'd like to share from your time as a student that you would recommend to other students now, to current students? Anything that you want to share, experiences or opportunities that you participated in that you believe that would be of value to current students? Anyone? Go ahead, Lisa. Thank you.
All right. You know, I'd say I'm an engineer, right? And in my early years, I was quite shy, introverted. And my Myers-Briggs test, personality test, it actually changed halfway through my career. But I like to tell the story. I had two epiphanies in my career. And, you know, when you're an engineer, sometimes you think you know it all, or math can solve it, or science can solve it. And while I was working at Ford, we were working on a project, and I realized how different everybody was. Just because they couldn't see what I saw, the answer being, or the solution being, or what have you, didn't mean that they didn't know, or they didn't have a perspective or something to share or an experience. We all come from different backgrounds. So the most important thing is understanding, to me, people. My second epiphany in my lifetime was I became the CEO of a company, and I realized that we could fix all of the equipment and all of the processes, but if I couldn't bring the people on the journey with me, it wouldn't matter. And that's when my kind of skill set shifted to be 90% leadership, 10% detail. So in my lifetime, I've pretty much figured out everything is about people. And the products, the services, or what have you, they come along for the ride. And if you're doing a good job, the money comes along for the ride. The business results come along for the ride.
Sure.
Can make the biggest difference and get the most satisfaction is bringing the people with you and letting them share in it and making sure that they have a good role that brings them greater capability, greater satisfaction themselves, and what have you.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Lisa. I appreciate it. It looks like we're running out of time. I have one final question of you ladies, and that is about mentorship. Do you have any advice for our students on finding the right mentor? I'll start with Kim.
Finding the right mentor. I think over a lifetime, I've had several. So I would say have many mentors. Don't think that this is like a one and done thing. Build relationships with lots of different people. Who's going to be your accountability mentor? Who's going to be your cheerleader mentor? Who's going to be your skills-based mentor? Really think about what you're trying to learn through that coaching relationship, and understand it's not always held by just a single person, but it's held by lots of different people.
Excellent advice. Thank you. Anyone else?
Just make sure the interaction is genuine and not transactional.
Absolutely.
I mentor a lot of people, and at the moment it becomes transactional, I'm a lot less interested.
Thank you, Lisa. Trish or Mary?
No, I one last thing I would add is you never know who could be a mentee or a mentor, even at my point. So, and it doesn't have to always be someone, it's a professional relationship or whatever. It could be a life coach or someone you run into or whatever. So just always like, be on the lookout and don't disregard people. Everyone has something to offer, and so do we. So, and there's sometimes a connection that can be made.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Trish. Mary, any insight or?
The only thing I would add is that have an idea on who, how that person might connect with you. Why you want that person to be your mentor. And I agree, there'll be many in your lifetime.
Absolutely.
And they'll fulfill a need for a period of time. And then you might meet somebody else that challenges you in some other way. But that's what I would say, is kind of have an idea on what you need a mentor for.
Well, thank you so much, ladies. I appreciate you joining us today. We have run out of time. Thank you again for joining us for insights from U of M-Dearborn alumni succeeding in the C-suite. Everyone, we've heard from some incredibly inspiring women today who have shared their experiences and their insights on what it takes to succeed in senior leadership roles. And as we bring this discussion to a close, I want to leave you with a few key takeaways. First and foremost, we have to continue to champion gender diversity in the workplace. Progress is made. However, there's still much work to be done to ensure that women have equal opportunities to succeed in leadership positions. Secondly, it's most important to recognize that success in the C-suite combined requires that we have a combination of hard work, resilience, and a willingness to take risk. The women on this panel have all faced challenges and setbacks along the way, but they've persevered and ultimately they've achieved their goals. And finally, it's crucial that we support and mentor other women on their journeys. We need to create a community of strong, empowered women who can inspire and lift each other up. I thank you all, you panelists, for sharing your valuable insights, your experiences, and thank you everyone who have joined us today. I hope we can continue this conversation and that we can work towards a more diverse and inclusive future. Thank you all again. Have a great day, everyone. Bye now.